Hello, hello. Welcome everyone to the fourth session of our Fintorn Bay Arts AMP Music Online Training Program. This run of discussions is called Working Creatively and Creatively Working. The aim of this discussion is to shine a light on the differing avenues that you can take to find ways to sustain passion in music, work within the industry, and improve personal progression in your chosen field. We've had a few guests recently that have been kind of really focused on work outside of actually making music and creating art. Obviously, that's a massive part of the creative industry, but the overarching one is actually making art. So I know a lot of you are budding artists, musicians and creators. So tonight we're going to chat to someone who has done it all. This week we'll be shining a light on what it takes to be a professional musician, business owner, composer and teacher. Like I said, we've had a few new non-musicians recently, so I thought high time to bring someone who's at the other end of the creative scale. So welcome, Siobhan Wilson.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
You're very, very welcome. Thanks for taking the time to chat to us tonight. How are you doing?
Yeah, it's absolutely freezing where I am. So I've got my little dog, McTavish. He's my hot water bottle.
Oh, bless. Hello.
He's got an Instagram page called McTavish the Familiar.
Gotta get that plug in early. Gotta get it in early.
He's been exploited.
Well, good for something. Yeah, so cold, but you're good on the whole?
Yeah, really good. Yeah, just been in my home studio all of today, working on some tracks. And just graduated as well last week. That's my graduation mug.
Hey, congratulations. That's brilliant. That's brilliant. What did you graduate in? Was it a master's, right?
Yeah, so I started off doing an MSc in music for screen, composition for screen, which was like anything from kind of more Max MSP algorithmic type modules to like cinematography and learning to compose against film. But then I actually changed it in year 2 to an MMUS and just all round music composition, and did a little bit more exploring into writing for cello and classical kind of instruments a little bit, and then ended up in a final project with just like pop music. So I wanted to explore as much as possible.
As wide a spectrum as possible. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations. Well done. You've achieved it. Any more studying on the horizon, or is that you had your fill?
Studying just now for a first aid certificate in mental health. Simply because the coronavirus pandemic has had a huge impact on the music scene. I feel like we have had some losses of great value to our music scene during this time. I think every country has had that. There's been a lot of pressure on people recently, but overall in the music industry, that's a really necessary like kind of factor that we have to take into account as our mental health. And I just thought I always learn something. I like doing certificates and further learning or whatever, like go to uni and stuff. I just plan to do that for the rest of my life if I can.
Yeah, why not? Yeah, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. Wow, that sounds really interesting. How long will you be studying for that for?
It's just like a month.
Oh, nice. Okay, cool. So you'll be good and ready to go next year.
Yeah, next year. I don't know. Find something else.
Yeah, sure. What sort of so are you gonna like try and focus on some work within mental health in that regard, or is it just as to have the kind of knowledge to be able to go forward with it?
Yeah, so I think it's important like to address in the music industry that there's no HR when you're a freelance artist. And so really we've got a great community and sense of community, whether we're touring or in studios or in a band, where we have to work together and kind of enterprise and find like basically ways to keep each other in employment and in good mental health. Like we're always kind of relying on each other a lot in this kind of musical ecosystem of freelance art world to help each other out. And so I think just having like a first aid certificate for physical health is really important if you're on tour traveling the world, for example. But it's equally as important to have a certificate in mental health first aid.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, like there's been a lot of news stories in the last few years. I mean, Avicii is a huge, that was a massive news story, like, and it's in the same sense as well as being able to identify when you're in a place that is maybe not healthy for your mental health or your physical health, but your team or your manager or whatever are saying, go, 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 keep doing it. So it's good to have someone there who can tap you on the shoulder and say, it's okay, you can slow down, or we can talk about this, rather than suffer in silence.
Exactly. It doesn't matter if you're on the creative side, writing, or if you're the tour manager in a band, or if you're the promoter at a show, it can always be useful. And I think especially for younger generations, it's really important to take that on board from the start as you're planning your career and as you're thinking about what you might want to do. It's really important to have self-care as a huge part of your plan.
Yeah, it should be definitely one of the first things you think of, because it's very difficult to learn after the fact.
Yeah.
Like to change habits that you've built up over the years, and like small talk things that you do to yourself or to others around you when you're not feeling your best. And we're all susceptible to it. So no, good on you. I think that's so important. It feels like it is changing. I was speaking to someone today about it, and they're a fellow musician as well, and they were saying that the culture around kind of like pushy managers and tour managers and agents is changing. Lots more independent managers and agents now who are basing their work relationship with pre-existing friendships, like with artists and creators, rather than it being like a massive faceless organization where you're just in contact with an email address, essentially.
Exactly.
So hopefully we're seeing some change in that regard. So anyway, I thought we would start the session just with a little video to give everyone at home an idea of what you're all about. So Steve, if you wouldn't mind popping that on, and then we'll get chatting.
Penny picture, she doesn't speak to her family anymore, holds up the magic piece in a concrete square. Roadside fruit, the shell house, Anna Maria in a basket. A picture in a picture. The paint was still dripping wet. Guess who's coming to the cafe, dressed in velvet? They said it used to be, they said it was. They said it used to be, they said it was. A picture in a picture. The paint was still dripping wet. Guess who's coming how it feels.
Amazing. That's so nice. That was Plastic Grave, for anyone wondering what that song was. Could you tell us a little bit about that song just before we get started?
Yeah, that's a song from my last EP, Plastic Grave. Actually, this is like the back of the room of my home studio, and you can see all these cardboard boxes. So I kind of live in like a merch. Like I've got so much boxes of CDs and things. So when that song was playing, I was like, I'll go and get the CD.
Very cool.
Just beside me. So I made the Plastic Grave EPs into a handmade recycled cardboard,
Nice.
like 3D case. It's
Yeah.
stars there, and then I hand stamped. I got these stamps made with the track listing. Absolute nightmare to put together. It was weeks.
How many did you do?
I honestly can't remember. I think it was less than. I think it was maybe 300.
Yeah, I have to hand stamp every record that we put out on my record label, and
Oh, cool.
it drives me around the bend. Like trying to you stamp it, and then you got to try and find a place around. You got to try and find room in the flat for 300 records to dry. Yeah, so I know the pain, but yeah, it's good. It's a good feeling once you've done it all, and it's also a nice way to keep it environmentally friendly. You know,
I think it's good that it's environmentally friendly. These are even like the actual plastic bits made of recycled plastic.
Oh, cool.
But like, I think that when you can touch something that you know has been hand stamped by an artist and you've got it, it does mean a little bit more.
Yeah, there's a connection there. You know, like it's that personification of the artist having done it physically.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, let's get started. So I thought we could start off with you giving us a bit more in-depth look at who you are and what you do, if that's all right.
Sure. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Thank you.
So I'm living in Coldstream in the Scottish Borders right now. Songwriting, composing, recording in my home studio, and working on basically composing from a couple of different aspects, from pop music to some library music just now, and then helping make the music for video games as well.
Oh, cool.
And so just basically anything that can be done from a home studio, just sort of working within those, within that environment. I was playing live on stage for years, like some years more, some years less, around releases and things like that. Not done as much of that recently because of the pandemic, but it's not that I don't do it anymore. It's just that it's not that convenient right now.
Yeah, it's I guess like logistically as well, it's a lot easier for me to pick up a USB and disappear and come back, but for you with all your gear and you know, like the logistics of it, let alone then the fact that it may not actually go ahead or may be cancelled last minute, you know, like you're then stuck somewhere with all of your gear and a band and all that kind of stuff, you know, and the costs can jump up quite quickly without you actually performing.
Here's the thing. I've had about 6 gigs just in this like second half of this year, and 4 of them were either cancelled or rescheduled or something. And so that's kind of like, but I was expecting that. It didn't come unexpected. So it's just, I feel like the live music industry is like, it's kind of like an old car, like really want it to start up and then it kind of stops a bit, and then you go forward a little bit, and then there's new rules put in place. Everyone's trying their best, and everyone's trying so hard to keep everyone safe. But also sustain the music industry somehow.
And that's 4 out of the 6 in arguably the least risky part of the year as well. In some, you know, like the second half with summer and all that kind of stuff, when technically we should be all right to do it. God, I'm sorry that can't be easy. I know, like you can expect it, but it doesn't soften it that much, you know. still not being able to. So
Yeah, I think if I had some an element of advice for any musician at any time of the year, pandemic or not pandemic, it would be to try and have as flexible an approach to a career as possible, because I guess because I could do some music in the studio, it gave me a sort of chance to develop on that by being stuck at home so much. And it made me realize that having kind of a little bit of experience in a couple of different fields was a useful tool. And
yeah,
it's not always possible, but if it is possible to
yeah.
have a couple of different strings to your bow, then it's really it's really a good
It's
resource.
valuable. Yeah, I completely agree. I think especially with the pandemic kind of wiping the slate clean in a lot of ways, it's good to still be able to pursue your passion and make it work for you, but maybe not in the way that you had initially envisaged. But also I think it's good for mental health and to not be reliant on something that is so volatile as a gig, because a gig, even if you are able to do a gig, it may not be in like, from personal experience, and probably the same for yourself, some gigs are good and some are terrible in like your own opinion. Do you know what I mean? And so that can be quite mentally taxing as well. So having something that is almost easier to control, that you can step aside and do for a time, if you're, like, for example, if it is pandemic, or if it's that you need a break mentally from touring or performing because of, for whatever reasons, it's good to have that other avenue to be able to do, if like you say, if it's possible.
Yeah.
So I've gleaned some information from your website, and I find you were born and you grew up in Elgin, which is a small town right next to the small town that I grew up and was born in, called Forres. So I thought we could talk a little bit about that, if that's right, because that's also where Finton Bay Arts is based, in Morayshire, in that area. So can you tell me a little bit about what it was like growing up in a town like Elgin, and how you came to making music?
Yeah, Elgin was it was a fertile ground for creativity, because a lot of people were in bands and learning instruments. There was a shop where we went every Saturday afternoon just to look at CDs and look at guitars and talk. Music and skateboarding were the most popular things to do for
Yeah,
teenagers. So for
yeah,
me, that was like just good luck, basically.
yeah,
That's the one thing that I like the most. So it helped me to kind of immerse myself in something that would become a career later. But I went to Bishop Mill Primary, Elgin Academy, and I learned with John Mustard on the cello and Margaret Keswick on the piano. And John Mustard had a really great Saturday morning music school with a Saturday morning orchestra. And he also set up a string quartet at one point, and there was the school orchestra at Elgin Academy. So I was a part of just anything that
yeah.
was, available. And I was in a couple of rock bands and things like that, and started songwriting. And so it was really a good place to be for me
Yeah.
as a
I mean,
teenager.
it sounds amazing. Like, from what you mentioned about your teachers there, like having such support, and them really doing extracurricular musical stuff alongside teaching at school as well, like you said, the orchestra on the Saturday and stuff like that. I mean, just having, and I guess in such a small town, it's very easy to access that kind of stuff, because the pool of people doing it is so much smaller, and also like information is far more accessible when it's a small town like that, like everyone knows what's going on. And so being able to, for performance based stuff as well, like, like once you started, you're saying, in rock bands and stuff like that, everyone's going to know that you're performing. It's not like because it's such a small town in that regard, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, like
uh,
if there was one gig on at the town hall, like I remember I saw Top Loader,
oh wow.
and there'd be one gig on, and yeah, everyone would go, and it was so
Because
hard.
it's like the one night out, do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Yeah,
great. But
brilliant.
I think there can be a misconception about rural places. And Elgin's a good example of that. Just because it's a smaller town doesn't mean there aren't things going on. Like on paper, there's not a hydro in every like village in Scotland. So on paper it looks like there might be less going on, but it's definitely a misconception, and there's so many resources around that kind of like environment, especially when you're learning and when you're young and when you're looking for inspiration to create. I realize now that I do a little bit of teaching, just how much effort and time the teachers I had when I was in Elgin really put in to giving us that kind of extra music education.
Yeah, and I guess also what you were saying about like resources and whatnot, something we've touched upon in previous sessions is the kind of do it yourself, the DIY aspect of rural areas as well. You know, like it's because there isn't a hydro, because there isn't something, you know, there's not specifically dedicated event spaces per se. There's lots of function rooms and yes, you like the town hall and things like that. So you have to be a bit more creative about how you put on an event maybe, and you can't just rest on your laurels that, oh, we're doing it at X, Y, and Z, so people are going to come along. And I think that's also a really good thing to have, like another arrow in the quiver to have, to be able to take it and like be innovative in what your craft is as you go through it and through your passion.
Yeah, there's always something exciting going on. So it's kind of just tapping into that and then working with it. Like when I was growing up, you said you were from Forest, so we used to go to Forest for like the cool bands.
Yeah, well, I mean, it makes sense, you know.
We get the bus, we get the bus through from Elgin Forest, and the sort of high school bands or like young adult age bands would be like kind of premiering a new track or something. I can't remember what it was called. The venue was the something hotel, the Carlton Hotel.
The Carlton Hotel, yeah, probably.
I haven't thought of that in years. I was like, I just remember the name, but that was kind of like we'd go there in the high school type bands we'd be playing, but really good quality.
Yeah.
So, and every place has its unique accent in Scotland. It's unique music happening. It's kind of flair, and so there's a lot to be said about tapping into what's happening already.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's, I mean, that kind of covers what my my next question was going to be, was some benefits of being creative and growing up in a rural setting. So that is true. I mean, it's the same, I think, like when I was growing up in Forres, I was very much in the skate scene as well. We probably crossed paths at some point, but but yeah, like
I
just
didn't actually skateboard. I just used to stand beside the skateboarders. Like I'm quite clumsy. I'm not very sporty. I had the skateboarding shoes, like the Vans.
Yeah, you're there in spirit. Yeah.
And that's a skateboard, and I would just be like chilling.
Yeah, I used to rollerblade, and then I got made fun of, so then I started skateboarding. So what can I say? So when did you know that you wanted to kind of pursue a career in music, and what were some steps that you initially took, if you can kind of pick some out, that helped with you getting onto that path? I mean, other than obviously the orchestra and being in bands and things like that when you were a kid, was there like a defining moment that you were like, oh, okay, this is something I want to do? Or
yeah, not so much, because I was always like had a very kind of obsessive focus on music, and that was kind of a benefit to me because I was just so into it that there was never a doubt. I think that I was encouraged by like some of those music teachers to just like really challenge like myself and learn new things and push myself further. I felt like there was always something to learn within music. And there was always something to do. So it never became, I guess, like this sounds very hippy dippy, but just experiencing something to the fullest and taking it as for what it is. And then you just belong to like an art form or an art scene, like just fully immersing yourself in that and not being scared to do it. If you're passionate about something, just challenging any like prejudice. If you think, oh, those people in those rock bands don't look like me, am I going to fit in? Like, for example, just go for it and like just don't let anything stop you if you are like really passionate and really driven and really excited by something, and there's a strong chance that you will be able to motivate yourself to turn that into a career at some point. Like, it might be easy or it might be difficult, but I guess there's not really a step-by-step process that you can follow in the arts in that sense, because of the freelance nature of like building experience and work experience and having all these like different do you know what I mean? It's a little bit more of an unusual process to other jobs. So the more you immerse yourself in festivals or playing in bands and going to study music and hanging out in those bars and clubs where the music's played, the more chances you'll have of figuring out how to turn it into a career.
Yeah. And figuring out what it is that you want to do within that as well. You know, like the more exposure you have to it, the more you're going to find things that you enjoy and things that you don't enjoy about it, and able to streamline your process. And I think also as well, I think I definitely more in as an adult have been able to like shrug off some of the kind of shackles of like cool and uncool music that I used to be a slave to when I was growing up. But like, if I ever have like any advice, like exactly like you say, that I think the idea to like fit in with music is almost kind of like a double negative, because music is so wide ranging, and everyone, I've never met someone who says I don't like music. Like, you like something within it, and it reaches people in different ways. And I think if you're able to find, like you say, a kind of obsessive quality and a passion for it, then you'll attract the same type of people around you as you walk through life, and that will open up opportunities. And
I think it has to be said, if you want to be a music teacher, you can go to university and specifically gain a qualification in that, and then maybe do music around that. Like, in your time, build projects. If you want to be a jazz singer, then you might have to kind of go down a different route. You might end up going to university and studying it, but you might find that playing in clubs and jazz clubs and things would be a faster route to becoming a part of that world. And you might need to, unfortunately, have a part-time job or a full-time job to sustain that, which isn't always helpful for artists. And it's not really, even though that's the reality of what people have to do often, is to have a cafe job, and which is a really good job, but which isn't the job that you maybe are financing.
Or
it's a kind of necessary evil for many reasons, and so it is helpful. It's there as a resource, and it's good. But it depends on the genre of music, on the particular lifestyle that suits you, and there's like a million roads that you can go down. I think if you're like, every individual has their own individual path in the arts, and especially for performing or recording. And so having mentorship is so important, and having those mentors to kind of tailor your own individual path, because it does feel like a very vague open space of everything's possible. And
I know, and it's also, if you're passionate about something, it's very difficult sometimes to channel that into one particular avenue. You may be like a dog chasing a car, you know, or cars. You want to take a piece of everything. Like I'm working, I think, about 40 hours a week, and then try and have a DJ career and run a record label. And it's like an imbalance. But obviously for the last 2 years, it's been great, because I've been able to earn money and whatnot. But it's trying to figure out how much you can how to balance it if you are going to choose to work outside of your creative passion, and that's what you're trying to work towards. But it's like you say, like trying to remember that it's working towards something. It's not, you're not like stagnating in this job. It's actually helping this other really important part of your life that maybe right now is not flourishing as much as you'd like, because you're working too much, but it is actually putting money in the bank that is going to help you maybe 6 months from now, a year from now, with an opportunity that you can then afford to do, or a course that you could take, or mentorship, like you say.
Being a part of a course now, as you know, a 33-year-old who's like just done a master's and is kind of a teacher as well, like I still benefit and hopefully will always benefit in some way or form from like a part-time educational setting, because a formal approach to like a musical community such as a classroom or an online classroom, anything that can offer mentorship or peer support is going to mean that you're in some kind of a scene or another. So
Yeah.
a great place to start is any kind of education, like.
Absolutely. I completely agree. I think, yeah, like it's there's a lot more. I mean, nowadays it's definitely balancing out. In dance music, there's been obviously historically far less tutorage and traditional forms of education because it's been seen as like a subculture for a long time. But now it's on equal footings, in some would say, and the opportunities to do, you know, like online courses and reaching out to people as part of the scene. For example, this is a perfect opportunity for someone to tune in, and then off the back of this, maybe they listen to or pay attention to one point, and then they can reach out to us afterwards and talk to, and, you know, like the DMs are always open, sort of thing. That's I think that's one thing that I really want to like drive home, is that not to be scared to reach out to people that your peers or the people that you look up to, because they've been there, you know, they've been in that situation, and if you reach out to them, more than likely they're gonna, you know, like it's gonna hark back to their own experience and they'll be willing to help. I mean, there's a lot of people that won't, but most people are good people, so we'll leave it at that. I think we'll just go, because we kind of covered quite a lot of the basis of what I was going to ask you anyway.
Yeah.
What are some defining moments in your career that you can think of off the top of your head that you'd like to mention, and then we'll go into another song, I think.
So going back, definitely like hearing the cello for the first time in Elgin, it was like over the hedge of my next door neighbor from my back garden.
Oh, wow.
Their daughter was playing the cello outside, or like through a window or something. And I remember being like, what is that like deep noise, like a voice? It's like the most beautiful sound ever. My dad was like, oh, that's a cello. And I was like, I just need to play that. And that kind of like was a very defining moment, and like just realizing you hear something you love, you just go for it. It formed the rest of my life. And then maybe like playing the Colnitri piece by Max Bruch on the cello in the town hall just before I left Elgin. That was like a kind of solo piece with a chamber orchestra. And that was a big moment for me.
Yeah, I bet.
To perform, and it's all like performance based. Probably I supported Chris Isaac in the SEC a few years ago, that he did Wicked Game. Do you know it?
No, I don't.
Country song.
Steve is nodding. He's smiling and he's nodding. But I will have to check it out, definitely.
I just did like the worst impression of the song ever.
Audience, make your comments. Was that good or bad? No, I'm just kidding.
That was cool. That was a real buzz. The sound system was like amazing. I love venues with clean sound systems. Like, just, I remember like how nice that felt, the speakers and lights and everything. And up until 2 years ago, I went to America and I support Suzanne Vega, and that was in a kind of mountaintop theater in Colorado, in the Colorado mountains.
I think I've seen pictures of it. Yeah, it's like a natural open air amphitheater or something.
No, it was covered. It's more like was it? Oh, okay. But it was like kind of round shape, and then it was so high up in the mountains that we had like a special altitude like oxygen thing, just in case, like, because when you get nervous with the adrenaline, you get fainty or whatever. So I thought that was really cool.
That's really cool. That's not many people can say that. Like, again, altitude meter in case you couldn't play. Wow, it must have been really high up. My word.
It's hard to think about defining moments because it
Yeah, I
depends on
know.
the day that you ask. You'd remember something different, but those are the
It's
ones that spring to mind.
yeah. It's like whenever someone asks me to put a song on YouTube, I'm like, I don't know any music.
I know.
And I do this all the time. I don't know any music. Yeah, don't pick me.
Yeah.
On that note, we will pick some music. Steve's gonna pop on another song for us, and then we will talk about your work.
Okay.
Wake up, grab a brush and put a little makeup. Hide the scars to fade away the shake-up. Why'd you leave your keys upon the table? Here you go, create another fable. You wanted to grab a brush and put a little makeup. You wanted to hide the scars to fade away the shake-up. You wanted to, why'd you leave your keys upon the table? I don't think you trust in my self-righteous suicide. I cry when angels deserve to die. Wake up, grab a brush and put a little makeup. Hide the scars to fade away the shake-up. Why'd you leave your keys upon the table? Here you go, create another fable. You wanted to grab a brush and put a little makeup. You wanted to hide the scars to fade away the shake-up. You wanted to, why'd you leave your keys upon the table? I don't think you trust in my self-righteous suicide. I cry when angels deserve to die. In my self-righteous suicide, I cry when angels deserve to die. Father, 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 into your hands I commend my spirit. Father, into your hands, why have you forsaken me? In your eyes, forsaken me. In your thoughts, forsaken me. In your heart, forsaken me. Oh, trust in my self-righteous suicide. I cry when angels deserve to die.
Oh, there we go. That is great. I've had that song in my head for like the last 2 weeks straight because I've been listening to it whilst I've been writing up questions and stuff like that. It's so good. That's definitely that's definitely one of the bands growing up around Forres and Elgin that was getting played a lot.
That was I was in a band called Lost, so emo. And we did a cover of Chop Suey. I played bass. It was my
Nice.
friend's big brother's band, and they were in 5th and 6th year. And they couldn't find a bassist, so they like had to ask. I was like their
Nice.
little sister's
Oh,
friend.
kiss less, kiss.
She plays bass, so I was like, this is so cool. I get to do these songs. That's how I learned about System of a Down. So it was a bit of a kind of
Baptism of fire, somewhat.
yeah. But
Yeah, I
that's
mean,
one.
you've also made that song really easy to understand the lyrics, because the original, I'm like, I still like, what, 20 years later, I'm like, so I've now learned the lyrics. Thank you.
It's when it goes, when angels deserve to, and then I go die, and I go higher, but normally it's like
Yeah.
and that was a great lesson actually in social media and YouTube specifically, but it applies to Facebook or Instagram or whatever. Is I've never like read the comments, because everyone knows don't read the comments,
Yeah.
but just did it anyway because it was like a bit of a different thing, and it was like all in French and it was a cover, so I was like, somehow ended up on the comments, and then I relearned why to never look at the comments, because
Oh.
there was like, lots of nice comments, loads of positive ones, and that's, great. But then there were loads of like really terrible comments, and which I won't really repeat. Not all of them were like that bad, but just generally nasty. And once you start looking into YouTube, everyone, I'm sure, that has ever been on YouTube like stuck in a, what do you call it, a wormhole
Yeah.
of like suggested stuff. Everyone's noticed like weird comments, but when it's you, like in the video, it's just a bit kind of, I just learned basically why to never read the comments. And there is like a lot to be said about, not just for mental health, but just about making music online in the first place. It's really important to take into account like a plan for yourself if you ever encounter difficulties with nasty comments or unwanted messages or anything like that. It applies to people of all genders, but if you're a woman and you're experiencing any of that, like there are places to go if you Google like do you know what I mean, like links for advice on stuff like that. So I don't know if there's a place I could post them after, but if there were any,
we can add that to the upload when we put it on YouTube. We can pop it in the description there.
Yeah.
I think it definitely, especially because you're potentially kind of exposing yourself to a way wider audience than if you were to perform that in person to a group of people who'd come to see you, per se. Like you've got a lot of people who, like you say, with the algorithm, may not be not intentionally searching for it and stumble upon it and then feel free to say whatever they like because they're hidden behind a keyboard most of the time. And it gives strength.
It's the kind of stuff that, there's
no.
Sorry, carry on.
You're all good.
There's just a little glitch in there.
No,
I was just when I see that video, I don't think of that instantly. It doesn't remind me of that when I watch the video, but since this video and your organization focuses around 16 to 25-year-olds, I thought it was kind of something really worth mentioning in terms of just to have that expectation. And it's a horrible expectation to have, but if you can equip yourself with tools to be ready to ignore the noise of social media. A really cool thing to listen to is Blind Boy's last podcast episode. Blind Boy's the Irish comedian that wears a plastic bag on his head and did that song about the horse. Horse. And so he does an amazing podcast, and his last episode of his podcast is about resilience when you have an artist career online, whether you're in a city or rural. You have to depend on that kind of social media presence or online presence of some kind, collaborating, or whether it's emailing with a stranger or posting something that millions of people listen to. It's an interesting episode if anyone wants to hear it.
Definitely. I think I think anything to be able to separate self from what your output online is a good thing, I think, and trying to stay present in the real world and use it as a tool. And remember that the internet is a tool. It's not, yes, it is obviously a vital part of our community now, and like we can't escape that. But I'm listening to an audiobook about digital minimalism and like rejigging my relationship to social media, or trying to, failing at the moment. But you know, like if you're spending an inordinate amount of time online because your career is, I mean, especially in the last 2 years, especially, you know, and like creating those connections with the community online is all fine and well, but it's good to be able to still treat it as work and be able to say, okay, I'm going to have, if there's personal online time and that's something I can protect and that's mine, and then there's work online time and that's something that I can mentally disengage from and be and can you know, like upload and then disassociate from if I need to. And like having to be able to do that is really important, because otherwise you then muddy the two waters together. And you know, like we uploaded a track from our discography on a Premiere's YouTube page, and like it's not even any music that I've made, it was from someone else entirely, and there was a nasty comment and it hit me like a ton of bricks, and I was just like, I can't believe that, you know. And then you just have to remember that, I mean, you know, yeah, like, and that was just someone not liking me. Like, it wasn't like a misogynist, it wasn't like a nasty toxic comment, it was just someone didn't like it, and I was still like, you know. And it's just, yeah, like letting go of that, and like you say, having tools or having resources that you can tap into when inevitably at some point something negative and nasty will be said, and being able to divert yourself from it, you know.
You have to remember it as well, if you're doing music for fun or if you're doing music as a career, which should be fun as well, but whatever. But so whatever your role is within your music making, other people's comments don't define you. So it's important from a music conference or perhaps a record label's perspective to gauge where you're at with your social media following. But inside of your artistic practice and the way that you make your art, that's that part of what you do, the actual music making, cannot be driven by a social media following. It's very much something that comes as a result of making music. Maybe I'm wrong, like I'd be happy to
No, you're totally right. And I mean, I've like almost recently suffered from it myself, even 10 years in, you know, like I've been doing this for 10 years, and it's very easy to, if you've got a period where you're not necessarily doing too much creatively, then, and you're spending slightly more time online, it's very easy to warp your sense of value based on your stats that are online, and not actually going into the studio or picking out a couple of records and playing some music or plucking out a guitar or whatever it is, you know, like, and that's, it's very easy to lose sight of it. And, you know, like you were saying, you know, like obviously being a full-time musician and working in music should be fun too, but it is still a job and it still does take work. So it can quite easily dilute what you sometimes think is the overarching reason for doing it, and social media definitely adds its own, you know, like the cattle prod to that at times when you're feeling especially low or whatever the reason.
I think
we've lost you a little bit.
And I'm thinking about, like, you know, the future. Oh, am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
I was just saying, I agreed with everything that you say, and I'm thinking about, you know, the future and what's next, and I'm wondering how sustainable social media is for music as a job. And there are many benefits to being able to reach fans in different countries, and certain strategies online on social media that can create hype and buzz that as a part of a wider infrastructure and a wider mechanism that supports your career, that can be helpful. But platforms such as Patreon, where you pay a minimum membership subscription fee, can be even better than the other usual social media platforms, because it provides some sustainability. And so I used a Patreon at the start of the pandemic to
lost you again.
Live stream shows. Hello.
Hello. It keeps coming and going, but we caught the first. So you were just saying that you started using Patreon at the start of the pandemic.
Yes, I converted my live shows onto online streaming, and I performed to an audience on Patreon, and it was very supportive and very, very nice way to continue making music. I also realized I spend maybe like an hour or more on social media every day, kind of for free, to like invest in my own career. I know like some tips for social media at the beginning of a career is like, try and do 5 minutes before your morning coffee. Try and do a little bit every day, like follow a few people every day, put a picture every few days, like keep the content going, and it will build. And then you get to another stage in your career where you maybe got some followers and some people buying your music, but you realize that you're spending all this time kind of feeding a bigger machine. And it's a kind of, for me, it was a time to reassess. I wonder if I can do some of that, but be more connected with my fan base in a way that's actually a lot more rewarding and genuine.
For both as well,
And
you know, for both sides of the coin, for
yeah,
yourself and for the audience.
yeah, it's great to think about those kind of more sustainable platforms going forward that are available on the internet.
I think, yeah, it also kind of reminds me of why the internet was kind of created in the first place. It seems like it, you know, like
Yeah.
we've got this faceless corporations that data mine and drive an algorithm so that you only are, your opinion is constantly affirmed by those that you think surround you, but in actual fact it's a tiny little microcosm of the wider world. But the like Patreon and Twitch, StreamYard, all these kind of things, like I had the same thing. We started a radio station during lockdown, and it was great.
Cool.
It brings everyone together, and it was a really wholesome experience because you are still connecting with folks, but it's being able to connect with way more people from all over the world, but they're all there for the same reason. And it feels very poignant. And whereas you could do like a live stream on Instagram and it's just people like sat on the train. Do you know what I mean? And they're just scrolling through and they're not really paying attention. And it's not going to make you feel good. It's probably not going to make them feel that good either.
Yeah, I've noticed a difference in interaction on Patreon to platforms such as Instagram, and that is what you're saying about the attention span. If you are paying for a service, like my one's only £3 a month, so that's like the price of a coffee in Glasgow.
Yeah.
And a nice coffee, a matcha latte. But no, it's like it's cheap, but it's like you're investing in a service, so you want to watch something maybe for the whole video.
Yeah.
You'll find a different kind of market and a slightly different customer base different user basically of a music video, like, because you're going to click that button and you're going to wait for the whole thing to finish before you get distracted by the next thing on your newsfeed. You have to sign into the Patreon account and be like, what's that musician doing? And then, so there's just like a slightly different mentality. And when you said the thing about like attention spans, it just got me thinking, like, music definitely requires a lot of attention. Like you can't just listen to 5 seconds and move on, because it's not a TikTok video.
Yeah.
And it's a temporal event. Like, it needs to happen over time. It needs a beginning, a middle, and an end.
It needs time to breathe and like show its full meaning as well, you know. And I think one other thing that I really like, a point about Patreon is also as well, in terms of the performer side of it, is, you know, I almost feel like you're less guarded, because you know that it's a group of people who are paying and they're invested in what you do, and it feels safer than, and maybe not safer necessarily, but like, I definitely, my Instagram profile, Facebook, Twitter, all that kind of stuff are very, like, I keep it's quite guarded. Like, I don't share too much of myself, to like, not personal stuff. But if I was to do a Patreon or a Twitch or a radio where you're in the chat room with everyone and they're there for that period of time and you're chatting and talking and interacting, there's that real human connection even through the internet, which is great for the performer as well, because you're getting that human connection that you want as a performer.
I Absolutely. And what you're saying makes me think about safe spaces in the arts. And people talk about that a lot right now, safe spaces within music venues. And it applies to online spaces as well.
Absolutely.
So one of the best things about a membership space is to sign up. If there's a £1 a month subscription fee, you give your bank details for that, and there is like a policy on something like Patreon where, for example, if someone was writing nasty comments or unwanted messages, you can say that they're blocked, and you can complain about it at a further level. And it's a service that Facebook and Instagram could offer, but unfortunately they don't. And so it is a really good piece of information. I almost wish I'd thought of that 5 years ago.
Yeah, me too.
Annoying.
Yeah, I know. We missed a beat. I think it definitely creates a sense of accountability as well. And I think that it's really important because, I mean, there are no fully safe spaces regardless. Safer spaces are definitely something we can work towards. But yeah, having the, like you say, like the transparency and the fact that you're, as a viewer or a user, you're sharing some of yourself in order to be able to be a viewer, you know, like it does set a level of like kind of somewhat respect from the outset that Instagram and Facebook, it just doesn't exist whatsoever.
Yeah, I think it's much more similar to a live gig. You pay a ticket, you have a seat, nothing bad really usually happens.
Yeah. No one's throwing stuff at you.
Not that kind of music.
No, good. So I thought, well, we're actually like racing through time. So if you don't mind talking a little bit longer, we'll crack back in because we got a little bit distracted just there. But it's all very important stuff.
I'm good at that. I'm good at going off track.
No, it's great. I love that it's kind of taking its own path. So when I say you're a full-time musician, some folks who are tuned in may think that means just making music solely for yourself and releasing it. But you do other things within music, which we've touched upon briefly, but maybe you could talk a little bit more about those other avenues that you mentioned earlier that you do as like a side to your own personal music creation.
Yeah, I've got it written on my wall because I have these whiteboards that are like made of film that you can stick them onto the wall and write with a pen. So I just finished making the music for a documentary that's unreleased because it's still being edited, and that was a freelance video director, film director. I don't know why I just forgot what that was. And it's in Gaelic, which is lovely.
Cool.
And so making the music for that I was able to do that for my home studio. So I think of it like a pie, like I'd cut into a lot of different pieces. That's been like half of my pie for the last maybe few weeks. I've also been working on, so I have an online shop. Like this is the shop. I live in the shop. And a website and a record label and things like that. I've got a release coming up, but right now there's been what everyone calls Brexit delays. Are they even caused by Brexit? I don't know. I've not. But everything's delayed. But I've got
Adele, COVID, Brexit.
It's like COVID, Brexit, and then Adele gets blamed. Like so.
Adele, 500,000 records she pressed for her album. To be fair, they'll sell. I mean, they obviously project that she's going to be able to sell 500,000 vinyl records, but still blows my mind. But yeah, carry on anyway.
And then I'm finishing up a library production album, and then I'm almost finished with that. We went to track the drums last week, helping a composer write some songs for a video game, and then a little bit of teaching online. Teaching adults online, just like piano and general music and things, and lots of dog walking. I don't get paid for that, but that's a massive part of my I think I was doing more online shows for Patreon all summer, and I really want to do another one of them before Christmas. So I've got this rotating kind of like any job that I can do from my studio that can work into my freelance life that involves writing and composing if possible and and I'm quite restricted in terms of like I am a little bit remote right now, so if I don't know how to play something or do something, I just try to learn it on YouTube. Or I find like you get so much education from YouTube now.
Yeah, big time, big time. Yeah, we've still got you, Someone's just Love Guys, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, has asked if you would rate Patreon over Twitch, if you have any experience of Twitch at all, or if you've just been using Patreon.
Yeah, I've seen Limmy on Twitch. I've got a friend called Jason Turner. I don't know what his Twitch name is, but it might be the same. And he does electronic music, and he has this, it's not Max MSP, but it's some kind of visual thing. He's always like he's got a synthesizer, and he's like fading into like the background in this like 3D space world.
Cool.
So he was on Twitch over the pandemic, and I was tuning in to see what he was up to. And Limmy dropped his followers into his like tiny live stream. So that was exciting because Limmy just does that sometimes to his fans.
National treasure, that guy.
You can buy little tokens and things. Who's that painter Bob thingy with the nice painter guy?
Bob Ross.
Bob Ross is my like avatar type, like signature emoji with like rainbow hair. Nice. So I would say if you like fun stuff, and if you're quirky, and if you're like very kind of, you have a very modern approach, if your art and your genre applies to that. I think electronic music, it's not limited to electronic music, but it seems to be more easy if that's your style of playing. It might be a bit more fashionable. It's kind of like a bit cheaper as well. You don't have to subscribe every month. You can do little one-off tips. And maybe that's possible on Patreon as well, but there's less randomness. And that's what makes it safe and secure, and that's why I like it. And kind of like it's just its own space, and it's like my own little digital world that I really like it. But as a user, I enjoy using Twitch. So whatever your genre is, I think you should maybe try both of them and see which one.
I think that you're right. Like in dance music and electronic music, Twitch is definitely the overarching version, and then Patreon is sometimes more like I joined a Patreon during lockdown with and it was like a music producer and DJ who'd been doing it for like 25 years. And he was just like, I'm going to share everything I know. Each week we'll have a guest, similar to this sort of thing, but with, you know, like he set up a Discord channel as well. And then everyone was in the Discord, and everyone would be, you know, like he'd be sharing production tips and user manuals for certain equipment and synths and things like that. And you would pay to get this expert opinion. And that's definitely more of the kind of Patreon side of things. Like you say, it's like a dedicated space. So the library music sounds really interesting to me. And a question I have is, is the music that you make for the library music, is that it's obviously not, you're not being, or are you being commissioned for a specific show or documentary, or is it like a bank of music that you make and then it's there accessible for producers and editors to like tap into if they want to use it?
It's more like a bank. It's more like you produce an album of 10 songs, and then that's added to the bank of songs for editors, for example, a documentary editor to pull from. That's the easiest way to describe it.
No, that makes sense. So I guess, do you have like a kind of theme in mind when you're doing it? Is it, so for example, you know, like we're going to actually show in a couple of minutes, we're going to actually show some small examples from some library music that's featured of yours. But do you have, when you're approaching it, do you have something in mind, or are you kind of just going with the flow and creating, shall we say?
I just create, and then I get a lot of instructions from my colleagues. Kenneth Belcher is a guitarist, producer, multi-instrumentalist person in America, who I met at Edinburgh University. Another reason why studying can be really great. And just that networking, it doesn't have to be in person, it can be online. It doesn't have to be like a full-on masters, it can just be those open mic nights. I've made so many great contacts from open mics, and it's almost like the smaller the better, because then you can get to know people and things. He met me at Edinburgh Uni, and then that's his more or less full-time job, I think, is producing artists, and a lot of it involves library music, a lot of it's music documentary writing and film scoring, I think he does. So he's kind of like been a mentor for me, a really useful one. So I get a lot of instruction from him. From a technical perspective, and on creative level, I have my style that I've kind of built for years of finger picking on the guitar, playing. I've got like I don't know if you can see, piano.
Oh yeah.
I've got a Nord in my desk, and then I just run. I've got a Pro MPA preamp with this Scarlett Audio interface.
Yeah.
And I run it through like through the corridor into a cupboard, and then I've got one microphone, and I just use the same microphone for everything. I'm sure that's not advisable, but it's all I can afford.
Make do with what you can, like what the resources you got around you. I mean, it's working clearly, so it obviously can't be that bad.
Yeah, like and you find it all on Google. You find like beginner studio, home production, anything. There's like 1,000 Americans on YouTube with amazing like videos of like studio production. That's been incredible. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, no, definitely. That was very well answered. I think we'll jump to showing some of the library music examples then. So we've just got 2 short clips that are like excerpts that you've shared in the past. These are from 2 differing TV programs that your music's been featured in.
Noodles is growing up fast and is having an uncomplicated stay at the centre so far.
You want to talk to me? Do you want another one?
Noodles is growing up fast.
So a very short one, but you can hear in the background, like you say, it's like the finger picking kind of like, so it's like ambient. It's ambient, but yeah, I mean, it is, yeah.
Here's the thing: people think that library production is largely kind of plugins and things like that. Maybe people don't think that. That's just what I thought before I got into it. But I try and use as many natural instruments as possible, like guitar, and like play the piano first before I quantize it. I try and get it in time.
Yeah.
And I really push myself and challenge myself to like sing in tune and not auto tune like Melodyne or whatever. Yeah. Because it's kind of like something like a little baby seagull, like with a little twinkling in the back. I think it benefits from a bit of human
Absolutely.
touch.
I was gonna say it could come across as a bit too kind of automated and sterile sometimes if you are relying heavily on the technology rather than the kind of human element of it, which is yourself creating the music.
Yeah, but I get it's different for everyone, whatever you're.
I mean, different horses for different horses, isn't it? Really. So I saw on your website. So I'm just going to change it up a little bit. I saw on your website that you're funded by a few different charitable bodies. And can you explain how that came around and getting the funding and why it's important to you? Because I think that's an avenue that's also really important for anyone looking to maybe pursue a career is actually learning how to find funding, because there's a lot out there.
There's a lot out there, and so I've put on my website the charitable bodies who've funded me in the past or currently. So it's not like an annual kind of recurring thing. It's like an application per application basis. For example, recording an album or releasing something or touring. And it's a little bit of a catch-22 because you have a slight music presence and you have to prove that it needs to be built in order to kind of acquire a little bit of funding to help bring your art and the manufacturing of your art and that kind of presentation of your art in a physical or digital format to be exported either nationally or internationally. And so, which is a really important thing for the arts to exist, like not just in Scotland, but also like across the world, and with live touring, but streaming and things like that too. But there are a lot of things that are available for beginners. That the best place to get them would be on the Scottish Music Industry Association's website. I just took a break from Facebook. I've not deleted it. I've just deactivated it for 3 months because I saw that it changed to Meta. I was watching Frankie Boyle, and like after I learned about it, I was just like, Facebook's just kind of like, it's great for work if you sign up to the SMIA and their notifications. They're actually brilliant. They cover all age ranges and career levels, and it is actually a great resource. So every time something pops up on a notification, if you're following someone like the SMIA, if you apply to it, whether you're a beginner or slightly more advanced in your career, they can be really helpful. And the most important advice maybe that I would have for someone starting out would be, don't be discouraged if you get a negative reply. For someone who's been funded by different organizations, I've had loads of rejection letters, and it doesn't hurt to say that because it pays off sometimes in the end to, like, don't give up just because something hasn't worked. Go along to meetings, phone them up, ask what they're looking for. Don't be shy, don't be scared to ask for advice. And if it comes back negative, phone them up, ask them why. And it might be a few key areas that they might say, well, we're looking for a little bit more of this random thing that's missing from your, and again, other people commenting on your art or funding your art or whatever doesn't define your art practice. So it's important, it's good that they fund something like Creative Scotland or Help Musicians UK, are doing brilliant things for the music scene. And sometimes it's just a question of taking that time to tap into exactly what they're looking for. If they don't choose you, it doesn't mean that your music's not. It doesn't mean your music's
not a qualifying factor of your skill or what. Yeah, and I think there's also a bank of resources online. I'm pretty sure there's a female-led resource library journal, kind of online magazine called The White Pube, and they have excuse the name and the profanities. I know we have young ones listening, but they have a library bank of how to apply for funding as well. So there's resources out there for even just simple things like the wording, the phrasing, things like that. It's, I mean, I've never applied for any funding, and to me, it's an extremely daunting thought, because I have no idea, like, how do I prove that I need it when there's so many people that, and it's the same as, like when you would get past papers for exams, you read through this past paper and you go, oh, it's not actually as scary as I've made it out to be in my mind. It's actually something that's sometimes it's about dotting the I's and crossing the T's, less about the, like what it is that you're explaining, so to speak.
Absolutely. I'm extremely grateful to the funding that I've had and those funders, and that goes without saying, but it's amazing that it's there. But I recognize my privilege in being able to complete an application. I'm like, there's not the words I'm looking for, but what I mean is they do their best at making the applications as accessible as possible. And they do a good job of that. But if you aren't used to writing large volumes of, I don't know, paragraph, even if you are self-releasing and you've maybe not had as much professional experience yet in describing yourself and your own music. That was me, definitely. Not that long ago, a couple of years ago, trying to wrap my head around how do I actually even explain what it is I'm trying to do. And in those cases, you can reach out to some people who've done the funding apps before, ask them to read it. as you were saying, ask for help with wording, but there could be more done, is what I'm trying to say, to create accessibility for people that don't like writing funny. Like some people, like PRS Foundation is a really good one.
Yeah.
PRSF, they let you submit videos instead of writing.
That's a really good resource.
So that's a really good example of accessibility in that kind of area, and it just makes it feel fairer. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, completely. Well, sadly, we're going to have to put a pin in this. We've got so much more we could talk about, and this has been a reoccurring theme every week so far. We just dive into an area. Sadly, we've run out of time for tonight. So we're going to end with a song from your forthcoming album. So would you like to give us a little bit of a brief overview about that and introduce the song, and then we will bid you adieu.
Yeah. So I've got an album coming out. It's heavily delayed. All the LPs are heavily delayed by the Brexit / Adele / what's the other one, COVID pandemic, but it is up for pre-order on my Bandcamp. You can listen to it there as well. All the LP cases are handmade in a similar style to my Plastic Grave release, and so it's on Bandcamp if you want to check it out.
We will post. There's a lot of as well. What we'll do is we'll get all the links that we've been talking about, PRS, Creative Scotland, all that kind of stuff, and we'll post all of this stuff in the description for the YouTube upload. So if anyone wants to, there are social media pages. We'll be sharing the upload in the next week or so, and so to direct everyone who's been listening and paying attention, I hope.
Awesome.
So what song are we going to be listening to?
You to tell me. Oh yeah. My Kiss is not a messenger. We're talking about attention spans.
Yeah, I know. Oh,
I had a mind blank. This is my Kiss is not a messenger, and it's from my album Survivor.
Woo-woo. Thank you so much, Siobhan. This has been very insightful, and it's been great to chat to you. I hope everyone has enjoyed it. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to post them in the comments, and we can work a way of answering them over the next week as well. Thanks very much, Siobhan.
Thank you for having me. Really enjoyed it. Have a nice night.
You too.
My kiss is not a messenger. It doesn't wear an invitation. My love is not a fever. It's a temple with its own believers. I asked you to tread carefully on the dreams I already saved from the fire. My love is nothing like a rose. It's eyes that knows the sound of a bulldozer. My kiss is not a messenger. My lips don't wear an invitation. My kiss is not a messenger. It's haunting like a face in the clouds. It's begging for the sun to rise. lips don't wear an invitation. My kiss is not a messenger. My lips don't wear an invitation. My kiss is not a messenger. My lips don't wear an invitation. My kiss is not a messenger. My lips are not an invitation.
Thank you very much, everyone. Siobhan was incredible and very insightful. I hope you've all enjoyed that this evening. We'll be back in the new year at the end of January, so please keep an eye on our socials for the next hosts. And yeah, Happy New Year and Merry Christmas when it comes. Cheers.